So a lot of you people wanted to learn how to, scale your face shells, print them, support settings, things like that. So we have our shell here in Kira. And something you need to do is go to Preferences, Configure Kira, and then turn off Automatically Drop the Models to the build plate. And I'll show you why. So first things first, we're going to turn our shell upside down. And then I have this chart I'm working on, which is right here. And this is the face shell scaling chart. This will be on like every listing on Etsy. Very experimental. But for example, my circumference is 59 and my length is 23, so I'll be 101%. But this face shell has mid frames, so I'm going to scale up another 0.5% because the mid frames have deeper indents than a regular shell would, and these would push on your head. So I'm going to do 101.5. And that's just going to give me enough space to, be comfortable in my shell. And I also have, hair and stuff like that, so it's just good to have that extra space. And then we want the Z to be 0.06. And that's going to lift it up off the build plate. You can see right here, it's not touching the build plate. It's 3 layers above the build plate. When printing a circle, none of it's flat, so why would you want that touching the build plate? It's rounded, so you want it floating in the air. Okay, next what we have. We are going to look at our support settings. So 50 is good. Some people do 60, but 50 just works for me. If you put it at 60, you can see it gets a lot smaller. I personally don't want to do that. I don't trust my printer enough to do that. And I'm printing in PETG. For the next thing we've changed is the distance priority. Since we're printing something round, we want Z to override XY. That's just what we want. For stair step height, it's default at 3, but we want 0.2. What this is how precise the shape of the support interface is, so just put it to 0.2. And then for our density, we want 45. Default is 33. People recommend 80. 45 is just what works for me because I've found at 80, there's not like enough space for the print to actually grip to the supports well. And when it's too low, it grips too well. So, yeah. I know this tooltip says the opposite, but that's just what I found. So you can just copy these support settings. I'll kind of scroll. The ones with the blue circles are the only ones that I've changed. And then I have to use like a spatula, a plastic spatula, to actually get my prints off the supports. So next what we're going to need to do is look at these indents. You'll notice that this would probably be fine without supports, but this is really far out. I don't really trust this to print without supports. So what we're going to do is add a support blocker, which is right here. And then just click on our shell, and we're going to scale this up. And I'm literally doing this exactly how I would for like a face shell commission, which I do. DM me on Instagram if you want to buy a face shell from me, because, that's how I pay my rent. So, you could definitely buy face shells. I love making them for you guys. So I'm going to block off this set of holes. And then we are going to block off the magnets. So we're just going to click a few times. And this one as well. And then we're going to block off these magnets. And then we're going to go ahead and block off this holes on the mouth, because we don't need to print supports on all these holes. There's literally no point. So we're just going to scale this up. Go up here. Alright, so this should be good. We're going to go ahead and slice it. Make sure supports are on, infills at 100. And the adhesion, oh, I didn't go over that yet. We need a raft. Here's my raft settings. This is just basically so the round shape will turn out really nice. So just copy these and it should turn out well. I'm not going to go over what each one does, just literally copy these settings and you should be good. Alright, now we have our preview here, but we're running into an issue. You see all this right here printing down here? We don't want that. We just want it to end right here. So what we're probably going to do here is we're going to tilt this face shell back like 2 degrees or something minimal. guess we can do 3. Let's do 5. Let's see how that works. Let's slice again and see if that helps. Oh, quick thing. Make sure when after you rotate, you set this back to 0.6 again, or it's gonna be going through your build plate. So always make sure to do that. We have it here, kind of what you want to be looking at here, and we can tell that our shell isn't going through our build plate, which is good because it was last time. And yeah, so this is what we're gonna go with. You can just export it and you will be good. Alright, let's print a frame now. So here's one of my frames for my shell. This might be a little too thin for a FDM printer, but most of my files aren't like that, so we're gonna just tilt this backwards like this, and then you're like, huh, there's only gonna be supports here. Once again, put this to 0.6. We'll scale it up first to the same scale as your shell, and then we're gonna put this to 0.6. And we want all of this to be red. So what we need to do is turn our support up to 20, I think. 10? Yep. So turn this up to 10. And now when you slice, now you'll have everything covered. Look at that. Looks nice. Literally everything is covered by supports, which is exactly what you want when printing a frame. And you can tell, let's see if we can just do a single color, that there's not really that many like 3D printing, I guess you could say, artifacts, like when the layers stack. That's because we have it stacked this way. So the only stacking area you'll see is right here, which that can easily be sanded down. So this wouldn't be too bad. You kind of want to just position your lenses, just flipping them backwards. You can always angle them up a little more if you want, but pretty much like this to get the cleanest print. Now we're going to go ahead and do a mid-frame, just so you know how to print everything. Basically the same thing as the frame, just tilt it back. But with the mid-frames, since you don't really need that detail, what I like to do is tilt them down like this, and then you can do the 0.6 as well. Well, scale them up once again. Make sure you always scale everything, write down the scale that you're using for your shells. And yeah. So I think something like that would be good. And the reason we're doing 0.6 is because layers are in 0.2. So make sure you do a multiple of 0.2. So 0.2, 0.4, 0.6, 0.8, something like that for this. 0.6 is just what I found to work. And then for the mid frame, you don't need as crazy as a support angle. You can do 20 because you don't want it up in here. You just want it on the bottom. So we're going to do 20 for the mid frame and see how. All right, and that looks really good. So yeah, and then with all of these, you're going to have to use like different tools and stuff to get the supports off. It's not just going to peel off with your hands. But if you can just peel it off with your hands, your supports probably aren't going to be that tight against your print anyway. So now we're going to move on to resin printing. Alright, now we're in our resin printing slicer. I use Lychee Slicer. I just like the way they handle their supports. It's like really nice. You can use Shidoo Box or whatever else. Always make sure to add your scale first to whatever you're printing. I'm going to show you how to do mesh and frames. I personally always FDM print my mid frames, so I'm not going to show you how to resin print mid frames, but it's the same as frames if you want to resin print yours. And then as far as web shooters, you can just figure that out. They're pretty straightforward. So let's angle this back a little. I like to make sure that it's pretty pointed up. I would say something like this is good. So we're going to, I'm actually going to do it more like this. Now we're going to copy it, however you do it in your slicer. And then we're going to mirror it on the x-axis. So now we have a perfectly mirrored version of our thing. And then sometimes when you mirror it, it doesn't match exactly, so just rotate it some to get it closer to what you have on the other side. And then as far as these supports, they're straightforward. It's more so how you rotate them. I just click them both, And then I'm gonna change my tip diameter since I got a new resin, and this was too weak. I'm gonna do 0.35, and then you just generate automatic on ultra. Okay, so here's our resin supports on our frames. Always make sure that you have enough on the edge or the warp. This is okay. I'm gonna go in and add more, I think. So how I do that on Lychee Slicer is you can either click and add them, or I just hold down and it lets you paint them on like this, which I think is a really useful feature actually, because I can just, you know, drag them down and it just keeps adding them on. So we do that on both of them, because I'm gonna assume that this one isn't that perfect either. I always like to have lots of supports. This one isn't so bad, it looks better than the other one, but you know, I like to have enough just to make sure it doesn't warp. And then you need to make sure all your supports are selected. So we click and drag. Oh. And then you have to go in the manual and click parent. And that parents the bracings or the supports to the other supports. So they're more like durable and you're not using as much resin. And then after that, we're gonna go ahead and click the bracings button. And that just adds durability to your supports so they don't snap while you're printing. Alright, now we can go ahead and do the mesh. If you want to do the mesh first, that's fine. It'll probably be less laggy if you do that. Make sure to copy it and mirror it on the x-axis as well. And what people usually don't understand is that you don't want to like rotate the mesh besides like this way, because it's standing straight up is the best way to print it, because it can kind of just print out and then come back in. So how I do this, first we need to raise them up because it's not automatically going to do it for us. So just raise them up a little bit like that. And then we want to go ahead with the paint on supports. It's really helpful because I can just go in and just drag along. If you don't have paint on supports in your slicer, you're just going to have to click a bunch of times, but it's the same thing. You just want to do supports all around the edge. These are easy because they're small. And then you can do some on this edge too, wherever it'll let you. Sweet. And then you want to do some around the top and the sides. So we're gonna go around the sides as far down as it'll let us go. So it'll let us go down to here. And then we're gonna go over the top. And this just really helps stabilize the mesh since it's thin. I model my mesh 2 millimeters thick on most of my shells, so it shouldn't be an issue, but on my newer shells, some of the mesh is thinner. So we're gonna go like that. And I saw we accidentally slipped. And there's one of them touching the mesh. This one. So we don't want that, delete that. Nothing should be touching the actual mesh. Now we're gonna go ahead and do this one. Basically, wherever it'll let you put the supports on this outside edge is where you want to put supports for resin printing. You can also FDM print this mesh. In the Discord server, there is a forum showing you how to do it by Midnight Cosplays, Midnight Spidey, something like that. Let me look right here quick. Yeah, so right here, it's by, Midnight Cosplay. And he actually shows you how to FDM print mesh. I personally haven't done it, but, you know, he gets good results doing it. So maybe you can join the Discord and then take a look at this guide here, and that should help out. So, as you see, all of these are straight right now, so we don't want that. So we are going to click Parent. And this is going to be a better example on how the parent and bracings work. You can see that they all like kind of connect to each other now, except for a few. And then we can go ahead and click bracings. And now you can really see how it looks a lot more durable, and it's not just gonna break while it's printing. And you don't want that, because then you have to, clean out your vat and do all kinds of stuff. I've found that the clean feature on my printer actually works really well. So I recommend using that. I used to just take out my vat, drain my resin, and do all that the quote-unquote right way. But yeah, I mean, it works fine. So make sure that none of your supports are actually touching the front surface of your frames, because that's going to make them they're going to make divots when the supports come off, and it's going to be hard to sand that. So for example, let's just add one so you can kind of see what I mean. So for example, like if there's a support that's on your frame like that, or if there's one right here, you just want to delete those before you do the parent and bracings, because you just really don't want those on your print, because it's going to make them a lot harder to finish. So yeah, that's how we resin print Spider-Man frames. Alright, so I hope you enjoyed that tutorial. I'll be printing it in about a week or so, and then I'll get a face shell kit tutorial out for you. So I'll basically have everything laid out in front of me. I'll show you how to sand everything, paint everything, put it together. And yeah, I hope you enjoy. Thank you.